Hey everyone, I'm your host, Denislaus Foraging. Today's plant of the day is Great Mullein, so join me as we explore our incredible world of edible plants. In under 5 minutes, I'll give you all the information you need to start foraging for common mullein safely. Remember to always consult at least two of the following before consuming any wild plant. Our time starts now. Today we're diving into Verbascum thapsus, better known as woolly, great, or common mullein. It is a plant as fascinating as it is versatile. Mullein is a biennial plant, meaning it grows in two stages. In the first year, it grows as a low-to-the-ground rosette of felt-like leaves that are bluish-gray to green in color. These leaves are densely covered in trichomes, or tiny hair-like structures that give mullein its unique velvety and felt texture. In its second year, it produces a flowering stalk reaching 5 to 10 feet tall, topped with bright, vibrant yellow flowers. The leaves also grow in an alternating pattern around the flowering stalk. Although it is native to Eurasia and parts of Africa, you can find it just about anywhere. The hexagonal dots darker in color indicate a higher density of this plant. Here are the native ranges of great mullein in the U.S. These are the states where mullein is specifically considered invasive. Since I live in Georgia, I can safely forage for mullein as long as I stay within government regulations and property boundaries. Mullein is not a picky plant when it comes to soil type. That's partially why it's so widespread across our planet. It grows in many different types of areas such as disturbed, chalky, or even sandy soil. It also grows in meadows, pastures, forest openings, vacant lots, wood edges, bank sides, you name it. The quality of the soil often determines how big it will grow, and interestingly enough, it grows best in dry, sandy, and gravelly soils. Here's a video of the area where I found the largest mullein plant I've ever come across. See that soil? Great mullein loves and thrives on it. Kind of like that one friend that'll eat anything and still be perfectly fine. You know, the spiciest food known to man chased with a shot of vodka, or a plain quesadilla for the better part of 3 years. If anything, they'll probably be glowing after a meal like that. Mullein is the same way, thriving in whatever soil it finds. Nothing like a nice vacation in an abandoned construction site. The best time of year to harvest mullein is either in the fall of the first year or the spring of the second year. Quality is going to deteriorate after that. The leaves should feel fresh and look vibrant, and ideally be growing in a basal rosette. You can harvest the leaves by hand, and I encourage everyone to safely do so because it kind of feels like touching a fancy piece of clothing. You can take a few leaves and leave enough for it to continue growing, or if you live in a state or area where it's considered invasive, you can pull it out by the root or just cut it off at the base with a sharp knife. Now, in my opinion, here comes the most important part, the toxic lookalikes. I consider myself well versed in a plant when I can identify both the plant itself and its toxic lookalikes. It's like knowing your favorite snack so well that if you were blindfolded, you could still identify it by the smell, texture, or shape. We strive for this level of familiarity for plants in the wild so we can spot them without a second thought and hopefully avoid getting sick. Fortunately for us, mullein doesn't really have any toxic lookalikes. If you're a complete beginner, I would familiarize yourself with common foxglove and tobacco. In both cases, the key differences lie in the shape and texture of the leaves as well as their color. Foxglove is highly toxic, particularly the seeds and flowers. When it is flowering, it's fairly easy to tell apart from mullein. The flowers are purple, tube-shaped, and bell-like. The leaves do not feel like mullein leaves. They are soft and fluffy with a texture similar to sage or spinach. Tobacco, on the other hand, is toxic if ingested in large amounts due to the nicotine content. The leaves of the tobacco plant are smoother and more elongated, while mullein leaves are more felted and hairy. Once again, to ensure safety as a beginner, please consult at least two of the three following sources: a plant identification app such as iNaturalist or PlantNet, a field guide. My personal favorite is Sam Thayer's Field Guide to Edible Wild Plants, or a trusted expert. As always, stay safe and happy foraging. Stick around to the end of the video where I'll discuss some more interesting things about the plant, including its very fascinating history, medicinal value, nutritional properties, recipes, how to harvest and process, and more. Thanks for watching, happy foraging, and I'll see you outside. The medicinal properties of mullein are infinite, figuratively. This is in no way, shape, or form medical advice, but I will say that mullein has been used medicinally for over 2,000 years. In fact, Dioscorides was a Greek physician and botanist hired to be a doctor for the Roman army. He wrote a famous Greek encyclopedia of herbal medicine titled De Materia Medica, which was used for more than 1,500 years. He is the first documented individual to use mullein for respiratory ailments and for wounds. He would use it as a poultice, which is just a fancy way of saying a wet ball of mullein would be applied and wrapped around the wounds of his soldiers. Once European settlers introduced this plant to North America, the Native Americans were very, very quick to realize its medicinal potential. Tribes such as the Cherokee and Navajo used mullein for similar purposes to Dioscorides, such as treating coughs, colds, and skin irritations. They even smoked it to alleviate respiratory issues. That seems a little ironic to me, but I think a better word may actually be counterintuitive. I'm sure we've all seen marketing for mullein gummies that look really, really tasty to eat, but if you do partake in smoking of any kind, you can just throw mullein into your smoking mix. Now, smoking or vaping mullein isn't about healing the lungs directly. It's more so believed to soothe respiratory issues temporarily due to its expectorant properties. In essence, it's just going to help you loosen and expel mucus. In addition to the soothing effects, it also contains antimicrobial compounds such as saponines, which are believed to help with mild respiratory infections. That being said though, smoking anything is not without risk, and with modern herbalism, the focus is more so on the less invasive applications of mullein, like making it into a tea, tincture, or oil. If you're really in hot water, you can apply it directly to wounds or skin irritations. Mullein oil has been used as a treatment for earaches and outer ear infections due to its antiseptic properties. Mullein's compounds, flavonoids, saponines, and iridoid glycosides. Sorry, I just know I butchered that pronunciation. Anyways, these compounds are thought to treat headaches and alleviate cramps, as well as reduce inflammation. Now, the nutritional value of mullein is very little and is generally thought of as insignificant, so I won't be focusing too much on that. If you're starving in the woods and all you have around is mullein, you could theoretically boil it to get rid of the fine hairs that would cause irritation in your throat, but you're probably just better off boiling the roots and eating that instead. Again, very little energy or nutrition in either of these things, but they may keep you alive until you make it back home safely. Now let's get into some fun stuff. How to process mullein and the recipes. The first few mullein plants I harvested were smooth sailing. I cut the plant where the roots meet the base of the rosette, and then I pulled each leaf off individually, inspected it, and threaded a piece of string through the base of the stem. Then I hung that up in my shed and kind of just forgot about it. A couple weeks later, and they were dry enough to cut with herb scissors. Now, I recently came upon a massive mullein plant and wanted to try a different method. I cut it at the base again, but this time I didn't pull the leaves off. I just tied it to a tall floor lamp and set it in front of my window-mounted AC. I left this on just the fan setting, and mold happened. How I hate and love mold at the same time. Blue cheese, fantastic. Brie, amazing. Mold on my medicinal mullein, try saying that 3 times fast. Mold on my medicinal mullein, despicable. Once I found this mold, I sat in a chair of agony and despair, and I individually inspected each leaf for mold. The inner leaves were barely affected, but other leaves were barely salvageable. After this, I put all of the leaves in a toaster oven on the dehydrator setting for 8 hours at 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Turns out I had too many leaves stacked on top of each other for there to be proper airflow. In addition to this, the dehydrator setting on my old toaster oven isn't very reliable. My theory was that the trichomes of mullein would act as a barrier between other leaves. Maybe this would have worked in an industrial hydrator, but in this bad boy, it took well over 20 hours of dehydrating the leaves this way to get them to where they are now, cut up and relatively dry. And that wasn't even the worst part of my experiment. I made mullein tea with these cut up leaves for I think I made tea about 30 times, and this morning when I went to go make my morning herbal tea recipe at the very end of the video, I noticed a fine, almost vapor-like mist after unscrewing the mason jar. It may be kind of hard to see in the video, but trust me, it was there and I was livid. The mullein didn't smell as sweet and herbally as it did before, and after inspecting the jar, I found the culprit. Mold. Just a quick word of advice. If you're going to use a non-conventional dehydrator, kind of like mine, just make sure the leaves are evenly spaced out. And if you're really worried about making sure it dehydrates properly, just get rid of the stems and keep the leaves, you know. Also, don't forget, I already had mold introduced to the plant because of my tall floor lamp experiment, so your results may vary. I have had success with drying the leaves thoroughly when they were spaced out evenly on drying trays in my dehydrator. As Miss Frizzle would say, take chances, make mistakes. Or in this case, take mistakes and make chances. Happy foraging, everyone. I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Stick around for some recipes that will appear on your screen. My personal favorite is the mullein tea recipe. I drink it every morning, and sometimes I'll just leave the mullein plant matter in the teapot just so I can make another batch at night. Once again, happy foraging, and I hope you have the best of luck when it comes to finding mullein yourself.